But look, we want to switch and we want to talk to something that broke late in the day. We want to show you a video that surfaced this afternoon showing a confrontation between NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh and two men. It happened on Parliament Hill earlier today. You can see the men following Singh, and then one of them, we think, someone hurls an insult at Jagmeet Singh. Singh decides to confront them. Take a look at this.
Corrupted bastard.
Want to say something?
What?
Want to say something?
I didn't say nothing.
Who said that? You got something to say?
I didn't say corrupted bastard, but I said...
Is that what you said?
No, I did not say that.
Who said it?
Somebody behind me said that.
Was it me?
Was it you?
No.
You sure?
If it was me, I'd admit it, buddy.
Was it you or not?
If it was me, I'd admit it.
What'd you say then?
I didn't say nothing. It wasn't me. It was a gentleman behind me, I guess.
Who is it then? Point it
I
out.
have no idea who it was, buddy. My word.
You sure it's not you?
No, 100%.
You're a coward. You're not going to say it to my face. That's what's up.
Say what?
You're
If
not
I
gonna say it
said
to my
something
face.
like that to you, I'd admit it.
All right.
So we took our cameras to Parliament Hill to get some reaction from Singh's colleagues in the House of Commons. You can hear a group of protesters in the background who have been there since last week.
We're dealing right now with an increasingly dangerous and toxic mix for politicians of all stripes. I've had to run many gauntlets where I just have not felt safe at all. And I mean, I got a pretty thick skin. Somebody's going to get hurt. And I think what happened today was an absolute disgrace that a national leader was left by himself to defend himself when security just stood around and watched.
I think ministers should have more security. I think the leaders of federal parties should also. You know, Jagmeet is sadly insulted and, you know, sometimes almost physically aggressed by some people. I don't want him to have to defend himself physically, you know.
Mr. Singh is a bit of a lightning rod because he's recognizable, and there's so much rhetoric about the Liberals and the NDP. I find it really scary, and I worry that something is going to happen to people, to a politician.
All right, we're going to bring in the power panel to talk about this. Shachi Curl, Michelle Cadario, Kate Harrison here with me in studio, and Francoise Boivin. Shachi, what did you make of what we saw there? We have seen these protesters around Parliament really since the convoy, following, videotaping journalists, MPs. Mr. Singh has had this happen to him before. What was your reaction to what you saw?
I mean, it makes you sick to your stomach at a number of levels. First of all, important to realize and acknowledge and be appreciative of the fact that it did not escalate into violence. Mr. Singh is actually a very physically fit man. I think he could have handled himself in that situation.
I think he has martial arts training as well, which I wouldn't tangle with him. No.
Let's just be grateful for the restraint. The man who lied about hurling that insult is a little weasel, but I'm also very glad that he didn't shove Singh or do something like that, right? It could have gotten very bad very quickly. I spend a lot of time talking to Canadians in my world as a pollster and trying to better understand what is going on with civil society, what is going on with discourse, what is going on with people at what drives somebody to troll a Terry Fox memorial ceremony or always be following leaders or journalists, with their, what gives, what's up with that? I don't get it, but I do think it's like this toxic, vicious cycle of polarization and increasingly heightened language that comes at times, even from the rhetoric of our own political leaders, and then people react to that, they respond to that, it gets angrier and flintier. We're a long way from love and courage, and I'm not going to condemn Mr. Singh for losing his cool, and he did not physically lose his cool, but you could see he was ticked off. And I feel for him. I feel for anybody who has to deal with that. And yes, at times they're going to snap. I've also seen an era of politician, and I'm not saying what was happening to them in that moment was acceptable. It was assault. But, we've all seen the footage of politicians who've had the egg thrown at them or the macaroni thrown at them, and they just walked away. They just didn't flinch, didn't react, kept going. And I'm not saying that politicians should have to do that. That is an incredibly hard thing to do. But clearly something is breaking down in the level of tolerance that public figures have to put up with this stuff. But something is also fundamentally breaking down in the ability for ordinary Canadians, Americans, people around the world to just not act like jerks.
Well, Michelle, we're seeing this a lot with Mr. Singh. We're seeing a lot with politicians. There are women municipal politicians all over Quebec who have been bowing out because of the way they're being treated. Just sorry, I spoke over you there, but you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think we all have to just kind of reflect. When you're calling people names inside the House of Commons chamber, you're going to expect to be called names outside of the House of Commons chamber. And I think every single one of those MPs who are, flailing insults, calling people liars, and kind of being histrionic inside the chamber should kind of take a good look at themselves to see what kind of example they're setting. Because if it's okay inside, then why isn't it outside? I'm not saying it's a nice thing, but Mr. Singh should have risen above it, and he should have ignored it, and he should not in any way have gotten in the face of any other person. He has to be better than that. Watching that video, my first thought was, holy cow, is this actually going to escalate? And the aggressor was not the jerk who was calling people names when I was watching that video. I think that Mr. Singh, upon reflection, is going to look at that and really regret those 5 minutes. It is not how he should have acted. And I think that every single MP who was, speaking today should be thinking about their own, reflecting on how they actually conduct themselves within the chamber. There is no room for violence. Quite frankly, name calling is beneath them all. And so, answer respect with respect and show a better example.
But okay, that's an interesting response to Mr. Singh's response. Francoise, I wonder what your thoughts are, and also on the name calling thing. If you watch Question Period today, it was endless, directed at the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, and with a little bit of shooting back. And I don't know if this is fighting fire with fire or if there's a race to the bottom happening in politics, but just what are your thoughts on it?
Definitely, it was absolutely horrible. I mean, I felt bad for Chrystia Freeland, and thank God she was able to defend herself. But it must be so frustrating. I remember being in the House of Commons at the time of the last report of sponsorship. I entered politics after the whole event, and to be called by Conservatives corrupt and fraudster and this and that, it just comes to you. I understand what Michelle is saying about what Jagmeet should have done, and not maybe go in front of these people and just put them up to their face. What did you call me? Who said that? Because at some point in time, especially after so many times, you're human. You're a human being. I know that we're supposed to be perfect when we're politicians, but at some point in time, there's a limit. And as long as he doesn't use any force, at first I'm thinking, please don't go see those guys. Please don't turn around. Just walk away. But it's so human. And when you see the signs, you can like the Prime Minister or not. Really disagree strongly with him, but to call your Prime Minister a traitor, it gets to me. And the words we hear in the House, liar, this and that, somebody's got to go and put these guys in a corner for at least 2 days and say, go reflect on your behavior, because you're attracting all these bizarre people that are around feeling at ease to call anybody anything in violent words.
Kate, how do you see it all?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Michelle on this. I don't know if it's a bad day for Mr. Singh. Yes, to Francois' point, everybody is human. He has handled similar interactions differently. And he has been direct, and he has been, kind of courteous about it, but challenging somebody. I recall during the election campaign previous, I think he confronted somebody who had made a rather bigoted comment.
Well, and someone on Parliament Hill followed him all the way to the Chateau Laurier one time, too, so he's been confronted up there before.
So this is not new to him. I think what I observed was an escalation of that situation. And I'm inclined to agree with Michelle. I think he'll look back at that and maybe wish that he had done things a little bit differently. I do think that we're at a risk of, I would say, tut-tutting the tone of politics, because typically if it's working well, politicians are reflecting the frustrations and concerns that come forward from the people. Yes, they need to lead by example, but I also think that the reason why we're seeing a lot of frustration, spill over in protests and people kind of taking this up with politicians is because they are very upset at how things are going right now. So that is not to suggest that, these guys name calling is the right thing to do by any means. We are at a point in our politics where we're becoming a very divided nation. And I think that you're seeing that play out more and more on Parliament Hill and in protests that happen across the country.
Right. Okay. And Shachi, look, tut-tutting the tone, to use Kate's phrase. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, they use the gender criticism, you're clutching your pearls about, what happens in the House of Commons. I'm not a member of Parliament, but if I had you four on this show, and to disagree with you, I gave you an insulting nickname, questioned your motivations, and talk about your friendships and your connections, and impugned your motivations, your reputation, and your ideas based on these connections, I'd be fired. You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, political leadership needs to get back to debating ideas and solutions rather than attacking character, because it has become an epidemic since the pandemic.
David, it's why you see 60% of Canadians despairing of the fact that there is no room for political compromise in this country anymore, because we've lost the language to do it. It is why they say they increasingly feel like political orphans, not just because of party policies, but because of what they're seeing out there, and how they may vote for a party, but they're not all in on the tactics and the language and the tone of their party leaders or the politicians. It's also a lot to do with the normalization of what we've seen south of the border. And I'm not saying it didn't exist in Canada, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that we've, we've imported it. We were also innocent prior to. But, you watch what happened around January 6th. You watch what happened around the way people some people lost their minds around the pandemic and things like mask restrictions and mandates. And I hear Kate on the notion that people are upset, but I think something else has happened, and it's been normalized because leaders do not have the gumption and the courage to go to their bases and say, don't act like that at my rallies, don't act like that on my behalf, don't do that if you're upset. Channel that into political action. Make sure you're registered to vote. Join a campaign. Go door to door. Actually participate in the democratic process to make a change instead of doing whatever these people are doing. I don't understand the point of it. Does social media drive some of it? You get your clip on YouTube. You feel really special. Great. But I don't know how it's actually improving or affecting democratic process in this country at all.
So Kate, on that, I think back to, I agree with you. People are angry. They're frustrated. Cost of living has got them all riled up, and understandably so. But I think about how our politicians respond to it, how leaders respond to it. I go back to when John McCain was running against Barack Obama, and that woman stood up and said he's a Muslim, he's from another country, and he said, no, he's a good man. He's an American, he's a good man, he defended him. I don't know in 2024 if we see that in politics anymore, and I think we're worse off for it.
I am sort of glass half full in terms of the U.S.-Canada comparison on this. We do not have politicians looking to incite violence, as some may say is happening south of the border. We are still, I think, actually worlds apart in terms of the rhetoric that is happening south of the border and what we see play out in Canada. And I take my co-panelist's point. We've all knocked on a lot of doors. I have not ever had somebody say, I don't like the tone of your leader or your party as a reason to not vote for you. So unless that starts coming forward in terms of people saying this is a ballot consideration for me, you can expect that the issues are going to continue to drive it, and the polarization of those issues and the contrast to win out the day, as opposed to the argumentation around tone and messaging.
Okay, we're tight on time, so Michelle, just last word to you on this. I mean, is it something that won't change until voters demand it change? Because the way politics has gone with micro-targeting people at the edges, that big appeal to the middle isn't kind of there anymore. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I hate to say it, but I almost think that it's not going to change until something very drastic and likely terrible happens. And I'm going to put this on the doorstep of Donald Trump, who first socialized the idea of name calling to a much greater extent from the podium. And urging on Cheers to, lock her up as a start. And ever since then, that acceptance and that was almost like the grand okay, those things that you might be thinking in your head, those things that you've, started to put onto social media and tweet about at people, all of a sudden you can say in public, and then you can start chanting, and you can find like-minded people and kind of create chaos, and that's somehow how you're going to get your point across. I would hate to see this end in tragedy, but I'm not hopeful that it's just going to be everybody decides that we're going to behave better.
I don't want to be the pessimist, but I'm not even sure an extreme action will change it. I mean, Joe Cox was murdered in the United States. January 6th happened. Someone took a shot at Trump.
Twice.
And then there was this other most recent incident. So, there we are. Look, I want to thank you all for being here with us on a pretty big news day. Thank the Power Panel. Shachi Curl, Michelle Cadario, Francoise Boivin, and Kate Harrison. Thank you all very much.